this is MJ with MinIO. In this series of videos, we're going to walk through deploying MinIO using YAML files on a working Kubernetes cluster. The first series provides an overview of MinIO in the context of Kubernetes, and the second series walks through the process of setting up a Kubernetes lab environment. If you aren't already familiar with how MinIO works in Kubernetes and/or don't have a lab setup, I recommend that you follow those videos first. In this section, we're actually going to be talking about providing temporary access to the deployment that we just did on our K3s cluster. Now, you can use this kubectl port forward command to temporarily forward traffic from the MinIO pod to the local machine. But there's a couple of important notes about this. One is that it may not work depending on your setup. And the other is that this is only a short-term temporary access. So as soon as you stop this command from running, you will no longer be able to access it on these ports, even if it did work for you. So I'm also going to provide you with an alternative method to do this, and we will show that in the demo. But this actually forwards the pod ports 9000 and 9090 to the local machine using the shell command. The port forward command only functions while active in the shell. So again, if you quit this, you will no longer be able to access, and terminating the session closes the ports on the local machine. The local machine, I think, is the key here, because if you are not on this machine and accessing localhost or the 127 address on this machine, then this may not work for you. Let's jump into the demo and actually show this. So here we are in the demo environment, and I'm going to go ahead and show you the docs recommended way to access this, but it will not work for me just because of my particular configuration, and that might be true for you too. So I'm going to use this kubectl port forward command, and I'm going to forward it to the pod called MinIO. I'm going to forward 9000 and 9090 into the MinIO dev namespace. And what you'll see as the output is that it's saying 127.0.0.1, 9000 is forwarded, as well as 9090. But if we open up our browser and actually try to visit this page, we will not be able to get to it. So this has something to do with the fact that this is a remote system, and what it's exposing is a local IP address. And so it's not actually forwarding the traffic from the public IP address of our server into those pods correctly. So I'm going to give you a workaround for this right now. If we come back over here, even if this did work for you, if you were to press Control-C and exit out of that command, you would lose access to that portal. So what we want to do here is to configure something that's more long-term. So we will do a cat against a file that I've already created. I'm going to show you that setup. So this setup is actually going to use a node port, and a node port is basically exposing a high port between 30,000 and 32,000 and something on our host, and we're actually going to specify that we actually want this running on port 30,000. So we're going to create a new service with this file called service, the kind of service. We will call it the MinIO service, and we're specifying the MinIO dev namespace. The selector in this case is the app MinIO, and the type of the service is a node port service. So then we're saying we want to forward TCP on 30,000 into the target port of 9090 and the node port of 30,000 exposed externally. So if we do kubectl apply -f this file, we'll see that a new service has been created in here. And now if we return to our dashboard here, or sorry, our web browser here, and instead of 9090, we go to 30,000. And also note that your browser may default to HTTPS. This is not running any sort of TLS certificates, so that will not work. So you'll just want plain HTTP for this. You will get to the MinIO console login here. And this will be a persistent connection. Now, the other thing that we'll want to do here is to create something that routes to the API as well. So the previous command that we ran was this kubectl port forward command. And note that it forwards 9000 and 9090. So 9090 is actually for our web UI, but we also need to have a way to access 9000, particularly if we want to access the API or use the MC client, which uses the API port. So we actually need to forward that as well. So what I have here is another node port command called node port API. And you'll note what I've done here is to configure the same type of service, but in this case, we are saying that this is on port 30,001. So it's targeting port 9000 inside the pod, which is the API port, but the external port is going to be 30,001. So we're going to want to go ahead and apply this as well if we want the MC client to work. And now that's applied. I had previously applied it, so now it should be working now. And so now what we can do is to connect up to this host using the MC command. And so now what we can do is use this command to actually connect our MinIO client to that host on that 30,001 port that we just exposed. So it's MC alias set. The name of the alias is going to be Kate's MinIO dev. We give the IP address of our host, or it could be that if you're using a DNS name, you could have the DNS name in here. We're not using HTTPS in this case, so we just want it to be HTTP. And we're specifying port 30,001 and then the default credentials for that site. So when we go ahead and run that, we'll note that that was added successfully. And now we can actually do some uploads to this site and use both the web UI and the MC command to view what we've created on that site. So here we are back in the web UI, and let's go ahead and log in using those default credentials. And we can see that we don't have anything created yet because it's a brand new installation. So let's go ahead and create a bucket. We'll call it K3S because that's the server that we're installing this on. Go ahead and click Create Bucket. If we go to the object browser, we can now upload something to this bucket. So we'll go ahead and upload this 10 meg test file that I have here. And now that has been uploaded to our server. If we come back over to the demo environment and we do mcls and then the alias name, so this is Kate's-minio-dev, we can see that there is a Kate's test bucket actually created here. So we can see that now the MinIO client is able to communicate on port 30,001 because we exposed it using that node port. And the MinIO server is able to access from port 30,000 for the web UI. So that is pretty much all that you need to know about that particular part. And just to review before we close out, to connect in the browser, you'll use your host IP in 9090. That is only if the port forward works. If it doesn't, you'll need to apply that node port configuration to your specifications. You don't have to use port 30,000, but you can. And that will then be HTTP your host IP 30,000 to access the web UI. And then for the MC alias set, you'll run MC alias set Kate's MinIO dev, or whatever you want to call this particular alias. The IP address of your host, 9,000 if the port forward worked, or whatever port you set the node port for the API to be with the default credentials. And then you can run something like MC admin info against that cluster and make sure that that alias is working in your MC client as well. So hopefully that makes sense. Please leave any comments or questions you have in the video here. We're happy to answer those. And that is all for installing MinIO single node, single drive using the MinIO YAML configuration. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.